Welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour, your source for all hard rock, heavy metal, new metal, alternative, punk, horror punk, hardcore, rock, and all local bands, with your host, John the Bod, a.k.a. the Bodfather.
Hey everybody, welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour. I'm your host, John the Bod, a.k.a. the Bodfather. As always, I try to bring you guys an awesome interview, and today I hope I do so. I have none other than the man himself, one of my idols from that metal show, Mr. Eddie Trunk. What's going on, Eddie?
Hey, John, I'm just freezing my butt off here in New Jersey. It's been a brutal winter here, man.
I'd say it has, and it's been one here in Kentucky, too, and I cannot wait for spring and some baseball, and let's go Reds, I say.
Yeah, anything to get out of it. Just snow and 12 degrees here right now. It's about to be the 1st of March. It's just ready for it to let up a little bit.
Yeah, that is very true. So let's get into this. You have that metal show, plus you're also a DJ on Q104.3. But what led you up to wanting to be a DJ?
Well, radio has always been my passion. It's what started everything for me in the music industry, more or less. I started working in college radio while I was still in high school, and to me, radio was just a vehicle to spread the word about the bands that I liked. That's all it was really about. It wasn't about thinking I was some sort of great broadcaster, a great interviewer, or anything like that. It was just a vehicle to spread the word about bands that I loved and that I wasn't hearing on the radio. And when I was a kid, that's pretty much what fueled everything that I did. So I wrote, I worked in a record store, I did some radio, college radio at that point, anything to share the bands that I loved with other people. That's what it was really all about. And my radio show, my FM radio show now, it's entering its 31st year. It's syndicated. It's, as you said, live from New York on Q104, which is the biggest classic rock station in America. And I'm headed, as we speak, to go do that show right now. And it's also on about 25 other cities. And I also do another show on satellite radio that's live on Mondays. So I still, no matter what I have going on, like to try to make time for radio, and also like to try to do it live whenever I can, because I really feel that's something that's unfortunately going away in the radio business.
Yeah, and it sucks too, because I'm just a little old DJ behind a microphone at my home, but I love doing this, and it's online. But what about locals? Do you guys support a lot of locals up there with your radio show as well, or do you see that kind of fading away for the locals outlet for that?
You mean local bands?
Yeah.
Well, for me it's very hard because I have 3 hours a week on regular radio, or as they call it, terrestrial, on broadcast radio. Mm-hmm. And I have 4 hours a week on satellite. And there are so many bands that are signed, quite honestly, with labels and backing behind them. And I just simply don't have the time to get to all of those. I mean, it's virtually impossible with the time that I have to cover it all. And the simple truth is that the biggest majority of my audience still wants to hear the old Judas Priest or Iron Maiden album cut that they're not going to hear on their FM dial anywhere else. So I always try to create a balance, but I really don't do much with unsigned bands. I certainly will play local bands if they, have something going on and they happen to be from New York or New Jersey. But the criteria isn't really that. It's just, are they good, and do they have some buzz on them, and will they mesh well with the classic bread and butter bands that I play? Because, it's very difficult on FM radio. I essentially have 25 program directors, and the idea is to try to spread the show and get it on more radio stations and more outlets and to more ears. But honestly, it's still a struggle. It's still a huge struggle for me to do that, even after the things I've accomplished in my career, because most radio is so conservative and so afraid to do anything outside the box.
That's the reason why I like the little online radio show that I do, because I do support a lot of unsigned bands, a lot of local bands, because I do feel like it's tough enough for them to even try to get airplay on a national radio.
Yeah, it's a very difficult thing, and it's a definite balance that you have to find when you can do, if you're dealing with radio that is unrated and, it's not under the microscope of program directors and what have you, it's much easier to do that sort of stuff. But when you're dealing with what I'm dealing with, and these guys, quite honestly, being petrified of what I do as it is, I mean, people wouldn't believe the struggles I still fight to get my radio show on. All these guys tell me that they'll watch my TV show, but they're still petrified to put the radio show on because they'll look at the playlist and simply see an ACDC or Van Halen song that's not one of the three they play normally. And, unfortunately, there's not a lot of people actually in radio that are music junkies.
You mentioned ACDC. What do you think about them coming out with a new album, supposedly? That's what the rumor is. I hope that they do.
I certainly hope they do as well. I mean, I think they're probably bigger than they've ever been now. I mean, being away has made them even bigger. People just wondering what's going on with them. And, they, of course, have one of the biggest selling out records of all time with Back in Black. So they've been away. People miss them. I mean, I think they probably have, at their age, maybe one good tour, maybe an album or two left in them. But, I'm, of course, excited and hope that happens and hope that it comes to fruition. But the reality is, unfortunately, any band that has a catalog like AC/DC, it's going to all be about the tour.
Yeah.
Because people are going to be all about hearing the old songs and wanting to hear the classics. And they'll be able to work one or two new songs in there. But whatever drives it's very much going to be live shows and people hearing their old favorites. I mean, that's just the way it is with the classic bands. Even the biggest ones like AC/DC and the Stones don't really get the acceptance for their new music that they wish they would.
Yeah, it's like Motley Crue. They're going on their farewell tour. I just don't see them hanging it up.
Well, I've spoken to Nicky privately many times. He's a friend, and we talk, and he's very adamant that this is it. I mean, he's very proud of the fact that this is the original lineup of the band still, which so few people can actually say. And he wants to end that way. And, Mick's health isn't great, and the band has been somewhat dysfunctional for a long time. So I said this the other day, if Motley actually does go away and does not come back, they very well may be the first band that's done a farewell tour that actually never came back.
Yeah, because they've been a lot of bands say, this is our last tour, and then come back with 2 or 3 more albums, and plus do another farewell tour.
Yeah, it's almost become a joke. I mean, nobody takes it seriously anymore, but They claim it's for real, so time will tell.
All right, you've got 2 books that are out right now. They're called 80 Trunk Essential Hard Rock and Heavy Metal Volume 1 and 2. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, the first one came out in 2011. It was successful way beyond what I thought it would be, and I think to some degree even my publisher was taken by surprise by the amount of interest in it and how well it did. So I was obviously very thrilled and grateful for that. And for people that have the book, or for people that don't have the book, I should say, the books are not autobiographies. They're not super heavy on text. They're more a combination of some of my stories and some of the things I love about a wide variety of the bands that I've always been into, really cool photos, playlists, anecdotes, things like that. That's really what the books are. And the first book, as I said, did really well, and there were a lot of bands I wanted to put in the first book that I ran out of space for. So when it did really well, my publisher said, hey, do you think you would be interested in doing a second? And I said, sure, because there's a ton that I was not able to put in the first. So Volume 2 came out in September of 2013. And that also did really well, and I'm still in some ways promoting that and going out and doing the occasional book signings for that as well. So there are two books with a lot of my stories and dealings with these bands and bands that were important to me coming up in the scene, or just, bands that I thought were, had something to do with the evolution of this music, at least through my microscope and through my lens of the stuff I dealt with coming up in the 70s and 80s.
Mm-hmm. There's a band that I really like that they really had a foundation of metal that they put their own stamp on it, and that was Blue Cheer, actually. From back, I want to say back in the 70s. That band was just amazing to me, I thought. I mean, I'm a young guy, and I still listen to old 70s music.
Well, I don't know too much about them besides the couple hits that they had, but there are a lot of people that point to them as being one of the bands that really kind of formed the blueprint for metal. Matter of fact, when I worked for Megaforce Records in the 80s, the owner of that company, Johnny Z, actually did an album with Blue Cheer because he felt they were so important to him for the history of metal that he wanted to say that he did a record with them, and he did. So I don't know their music inside out, but I'm aware of their influence for sure.
With you doing that metal show, did you ever think that you guys would have the success that you've had with it so far?
I tell you what, John, people ask me that a lot, and I really didn't know what to think. I'd be lying if I said that I thought I'd still have the show on the air after more than 5 years and 100 episodes.
Yeah.
I didn't really see that sort of longevity, but I did know that the show had a pretty good chance because I knew how passionate fans of this music are. And what a lot of people don't know is that I had a long history with the channel before I even started that metal show. I was a host on VH1 Classic since 2002. So I had already had about 5 years under my belt working at that network as a VJ and interviewer, and that's really what got me in to be able to pitch this show and get this show off the ground. So, at the point when I started doing that metal show, I already had 5 years on the channel,
right,
which a lot of people don't realize because a lot of people didn't see some of that early stuff that I did. But that was very much the foundation for it. And even back then, when I did those interviews and did that hosting, I knew that there were people that really loved the stuff I was doing and the bands that they were seeing when I did the hard rock stuff. So I had a pretty good feeling about it, but I didn't necessarily know that it would maybe have the run that it had, and I'm obviously thrilled that it chugs along.
Well, I just got to say that I've been doing my online radio show for 3 years, and you, Don, and Jim have been a huge influence on me. So thank you for keeping metal alive. I just think it's awesome what you're doing, Eddie.
Well, thanks. I mean, I appreciate it, man. It's for me, it's been a lifelong crusade. I mean, since my days in high school, and all the different things that I've done in the business, and it's just always been for me about trying to spread this music and have it treated respectfully and have good objective dialogues about the good stuff, the stuff you don't like, and be able to engage people in it and hopefully grow it. So that's really what it's been about for me for the last 30 years of my life that I've dedicated to it.
I want to talk to you a little bit about safety at concerts because we've all seen it. Especially with Randy Blythe from Lamb of God, and especially with Dimebag Darrell, and then the suicidal tendencies thing that just happened here, I think, a couple months ago. Do you think that they need to take more precautions for safety at these shows? And if they don't take the precautions, the band shouldn't play?
Yeah, I think that whenever there's an incident like what happened with Randy, what happened with, as you said, the incredible tragedy of Dimebag, I think that unfortunately what happens is that in the wake of those things, there's an immediate outcry and there's people kind of saying, oh, things have to change and this is going to happen and that's going to happen. I think the reality is it gets forgotten pretty quickly. And I think that stuff just goes back to the way it used to be. And unfortunately, I think that it can control security at the middle to higher levels of concerts. But when you get to the club level, where the stuff with Randy happened and the stuff with and what happened Dime happened, it's really, really very difficult to control that because honestly, there's just the promoters don't want to spend the money. These are small clubs and budgets are tight and nobody's making a lot of money and they're not going to put funds into professional security. And it sucks, but it really comes down to economics, I think. I mean, after what happened to Dime, we heard all these things about security's going to be buttoned up backstage and there's going to be, pat downs and metal detectors and none of that's happened. Obviously there's only so far you can go with that stuff because if somebody is a loose cannon and is a nut, tragically they may still find their way to you, but you can't, the guys at the club levels, they're not going to do it. They just don't have the resources to do it. Obviously theaters and certainly arenas, it's bigger staff and bigger budget, more opportunity to do that. So I think there's definitely some change that has to be made. And as far as the stage diving and the moshing stuff goes, again, that's going to come down to the venues. I've seen venues, for a long time, venues tried to break that up when it happened. It wouldn't allow it. And then they seemed to let their foot off the pedal and allow it more and more. And I understand for some music, it's a part of the experience to go to the concert, but I've seen a lot of people come out of those pits with busted noses and everything. And
oh, yeah.
I don't know. To me, that's not fun going to a concert.
Yeah. I've seen it happen right in front of me. I went and watched Loca Bazooka several years ago. Saw a big mosh pit happen in front of me, and I got hit in the side of the head. And I was just an innocent bystander. I didn't want to mosh. I just wanted to watch the show. But I got tugged into it anyway, so it sucks. But I do think they need to be some type of higher security level. But like you said, it's economic times, and they're just pressed for money, and that happens.
Yeah, I think if you're a fan, if you're dealing with the stage diving and the moshing stuff, you just have to make sure you stay out of that fray.
Yeah.
You just have to stand back away from it a little bit if you want to not take the chance and get hurt. I mean, as a kid, I used to go see Anthrax all the time in clubs in New York, and I mean, they had crazy stage diving and pits and stuff. My friends would go in there and come out all mangled, and they would think it's the greatest thing. And I just stayed on the radius of it. I just kind of kept a few feet away from where that was happening, so that I didn't catch any of it, because I don't know. To me, going home with a busted nose wasn't exactly a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Coming out of a concert,
yeah.
But each his own, But as long as nobody else gets hurt, that's I think what you worry about.
I mean, you got to grow up and see some of the most killer bands ever come up, like Overkill, Anthrax. I mean, other bands like that. I mean, geez, I would love to see them come up like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, my whole life I grew up on the outskirts of New York City and New Jersey, less than an hour from Manhattan. So New York and New Jersey have always been my home stomping grounds. And as a result of living in the area of such a major market, the options are limitless as to what you could go see. And in the case of bands like Anthrax and Overkill, I mean, of course, they're from here. I mean, they're local bands. So it was great to be able to see them come up on the circuit and get bigger and become what they are. Same with the band on the hard rock side, like Skid Row. I mean, I used to see them in the clubs in Jersey before Sebastian was even their singer. Wow. And to have seen them come up on the circuit and get as big as they once were is pretty cool as well.
Now, I know that you've done a lot of interviews over the 30 years that you've done this, but what would you say your best interview has been so far, if you can name one?
Well, the TV or the radio side, or both?
Both.
Well, it's hard to say. The audience really is the ones that would say what the best one would be, because they're on the other side of the speaker or the screen, and they kind of make that judgment. I usually feel pretty good about most of them. The ones that I do. The more newsworthy ones have certainly been, well, heck, there's probably by far the most newsworthy one I did recently was exactly a week ago when Ace Frehley called into my radio show and announced that there would be no Kiss reunion at the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And that made world news all week, and that happened on my show exactly a week ago. So, whenever you get some sort of real exclusive news that you can just feel, especially with the internet these days, you can just feel it going out around the world when somebody says something or news is made. There's, I know it sounds silly, but there's almost a feeling in the air like, wow, this is going to go crazy right now. And after Ace called and said that, I sensed that. I sensed that every prep service and every morning show and every magazine or newspaper was going to pick up on that story.
Yeah.
So those are kind of cool moments. But, my favorite interviews are with people that you can really discuss and debate things with, and they don't hold it against you.
Mm-hmm.
You can talk about their entire career, the good, the bad, the things you like, the things you didn't like, and they've got a good objective outlook on their career, and they don't take it all too seriously, and they don't hold things against you if you're honest about things you didn't like that they once did. Guys that come to mind that are just so much fun to talk to is Sammy Hagar and Michael Anthony. Just great people, just so much fun. Rob Halford, Lars Ulrich, Brian Johnson. Those guys are just amazing. I mean, they're just fun people, and they're just what you see is what you get. They're still fans of music, too, so that's always great. The two Axl Rose interviews I did certainly made news, especially the radio one that happened back in '06. That was a big deal at the time when it happened. The one we did on that metal show was certainly newsworthy because nobody had seen him on TV at that point, but it's one I would have liked to have had back just because we waited so long for it that we were kind of exhausted by the time he finally came out.
Right. You're part of history, though, man. I mean, honestly, I don't care what anybody says. You guys are part of metal history to me.
Well, I never really stopped to think about that. Again, I come at this as a perspective of a fan. First and foremost, I don't think of myself more than a fan. I appreciate people having the regard for me that they do. It's kind of surreal to go to concerts and, do signings and have, people come up and want to take pictures and have me sign a ticket or something like that. I mean, that means the world to me because I really don't think of myself in those terms, but it's something that's been going on for a while now and comes with time, I think, and commitment and, kind of keeping it real, as they say, being straight about your feelings and you're not always going to say things that people like, but at the end of the day, you know, people are going to respect that you're willing to say what you think. And I enjoy that debate and that discussion and that dialogue. And for me to be able to make a living doing what I love for 30-plus years has been phenomenal. And don't get me wrong, I'm certainly not digging ditches by any stretch, but there's a lot that goes on into this behind the scenes. You know, I put a lot into this. It's been my life and work. And, you know, there is a lot of BS and drama and politics and stuff that people will never know about that you have to kind of do. It's not always easy to balance your passion where you want to do everything and versus you also now make a living at it and support a family from it. So it is a bit of a balancing act, but, you know, I certainly wouldn't trade it for the world. And when I have moments like my 25th anniversary in radio, Judas Priest played a private show for me. Last year, my 30th anniversary, Ace Frehley and Peter Criss reunited first time in 13 years and played for me. And all these great musicians came out and jammed. I mean, when stuff like that happens, it's kind of like, those are the only times where I really take a second and say, wow, this is really, I guess I really made some sort of impact with these people for them to do this stuff for me. So I don't take it lightly, and I appreciate anybody who really cares about what I do or what I've done.
Yeah, I got to see what was on that metal show. They showed the party that you had, and everybody was out there playing. I thought it was really cool. A lot of respect from them coming, you know, to that for you. I did get to listen to the Ace Frehley interview, and as I was listening to it, I was like, oh God, this is gonna be crazy because you know, this is my own personal thoughts on this. I do think Ace and I do think Peter should be up there playing a Kiss song. Just one freaking song. That's it. That's all the fans would want. But, you know, I guess everybody's got their own things about it. But I just think they're cheating the fans. And that's me personally. That's my own thoughts.
Well, everybody is certainly entitled to their opinion on this. And there's been no shortage of opinions, including my own. My website over the last week has just blown up with comments and discussion. And it's all been great. I mean, most of it has been, you know, very slanted towards one direction because many people feel the way you do. And I've made my thoughts known on my site and on radio shows and what have you. But, you know, Kiss is going to do, when you say Kiss, it's Gene and Paul. I mean, they're going to do what they feel is in the best interest of what they are doing now. Right. That's what people have to understand about this. It's about what Kiss are doing now. I personally am not a fan of what Kiss does now, but that doesn't mean they don't have the right to do it.
Right.
But for me, you know, I think what it's really about is protecting their interests for now. They want, you know, they are selling a version of a band that, you know, they don't want to remind people about Ace Frehley and Peter Criss. They want to make sure that people know that's just a spaceman and a catman. To me, I find that very offensive, but that's what they are trying to sell. They want to franchise Kiss, and they want to eventually replace themselves. And that's what's coming down the pike, and some people may buy that too. Who knows? Mm-hmm. It's not really of interest to me. But I understand their reasons. You know, I don't agree with their reasons, and I certainly think that for a song or two it wouldn't be the end of the world. But I get both sides of it. I see what they're worried about, and you know, they're worried about sparking another reunion and a whole drumbeat for a reunion tour. And you know, when you spend 12 years telling people it doesn't matter who's in the band, and then suddenly only the original four are being honored, and people are going to come from all over the world to see the original four play if they played, and you know what? It reminds everybody it certainly does matter who's in the band, and that's where, you know, that's exactly what I think they're trying to avoid.
It does. I mean, because you don't want to go see Metallica and they have 3 different band members, I mean, from the originals. That's just me. My own thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's everybody is certainly, you know, has an opinion on what Kiss should or shouldn't do with this thing and what should and shouldn't happen, but I'd say probably 90% of people feel that the original band should at least play a song, but Gene and Paul just don't want to go down that road. And I think what people forget is that not only would they have to rehearse, but you know, they would also need to reconnect on a personal level, maybe a little bit more than they want to as well. Because I don't care what anybody says. I mean, you can have all the infighting and all the barbs and what have you that you want, but you get 4 people that started it in the room together on their own. And you know what? feelings are going to come back, good, bad, and otherwise. But it's still it's still a brotherhood, and I've seen it a million times. Bands that had a lot of infighting or issues or disagreements, and they all get in the same room, and there's this big hug, and next thing you know, overnight they're brothers again. That could be a little bit scary too for Gene and Paul, because maybe they're worried about reconnecting on more than one level with these guys, and it kind of clouding what they're trying to sell right now. To me, it's all about what they're trying to sell right now, and the fact that the Hall of Fame is only acknowledging the original four. And that, to me, is where the rub is.
Who do you think the most underrated guitarist is out there right now?
Oh, boy. That's awfully tough to say. I would say, well, he's not so underrated anymore because of the band that I had a hand in getting him into last year, but for a long time I would have told you Richie Kotzen, because I think Richie Kotzen is a genius, and I felt so strongly about that I recommended him to Mike Portnoy and Billy Sheehan when they were looking for someone to put the Winery Dogs together, and that has worked out really well, and certainly given Richie a much higher profile in America, especially as a singer and a guitar player. But Richie's an incredible talent. The guy can do it all: sing, write, play every instrument, and I absolutely love his work. I love his voice, and he's a phenomenal guitar player. But there's so many of them. This week on the new episode of That Metal Show that we're going to tape next week, we're going to have Mick Mars on.
Nice.
And in a big way, Mick Mars is extremely underrated. He's the forgotten member of Motley Crue. Nobody really talks about Mick. And, he's a guy that's been around for 30 years now, but I think in a lot of ways is pretty underrated.
Yeah.
But there's so many incredible guitar players, and unfortunately most people just don't know about them. And as much as I appreciate all their talents, I think that every day I'm sent clips of amazing musicians or guitar players or little kids who can play instruments really well. And that's all really great to see, don't get me wrong, but to me, I think the true talent is writing songs. I think that incredible players are a dime a dozen, but incredible bands and incredible songwriters are much, much more rare. And I think that is where the real talent needs to come from for the next wave of great bands. Mm-hmm. You can plug in a lot of great musicians. You can throw a stone down Sunset Boulevard, hit a great virtuoso guitar player in the head. But how many of them can really write a great song?
Very true.
That to me is really what you need.
That's very true, because usually you do an interview with the band or a member of the band, and they're saying, well, we all contribute to this song. And, normally when I was growing up, I would hear interviews and it'd just be a singer say, I wrote this song, I wrote the whole album. You don't hear that much anymore.
Yeah, a lot of bands are set up all different ways. I mean, you've got guys in bands that are pretty much the sole songwriter, and then you've got bands that really everybody does contribute. Then you have bands that there's only one or two guys that write, but they put everybody's name on the songwriting credit just because they want everybody to share in the wealth, because they know that the number one thing that usually breaks up bands is the disparity in the income and the money that they're making. Twisted Sister was like that. Dee Snider is the sole songwriter of every one of their songs, and when they were popular, he was living in a mansion and the other guys were barely getting by because he was making all the songwriting money, and that's where the real money is.
Yeah.
So, bands have to be careful how they set up their business, and everybody does it in a different way. But whether it's one person or the whole band's chemistry, just the ability to write great songs, I think is the real key to anything. And it's kind of often forgotten about. And when you've got all these talent shows on TV now, where everybody, so excited about an artist because they essentially did a great karaoke version of something, and then a lot of times that artist gets out there and tries to make an original record and falls on their face because they can't write or they don't have people writing original material for them that are any good. So
yeah,
it really is it's a very, very unique balance for, to have true greatness across the board.
I actually was going to say Mark Tremonti for me for the underrated guitarist, but
I love Mark and I love the new Alter Bridge record.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily agree that Mark is underrated. I think Mark's pretty highly regarded in the guitar circles. I mean, you still see, I just read a nice piece on him in Guitar World, so to me, he gets he gets some pretty good coverage. You know, I'm thinking of guys that are just almost completely off the radar in that regard.
Yeah.
Richie was like that. He's not like that quite so much anymore. Guy that I got turned on to recently that I think is pretty amazing is Andy Timmons. Andy Timmons, yeah, he's living in Dallas these days, and he was in the band Danger on their first record.
Okay.
But he since went off many years ago and does solo guitar records, and his stuff's pretty impressive. I like guys that play with a great sense of melody as well. And he's got a great sound, a great tone, a great melody. You know, I love John Sykes. He's one of my all-time favorite players from Whitesnake and Blue Murder. Unfortunately, John just doesn't do all that much. He just doesn't put out that much music. His output is minimal as far as how often he releases something, but he's a guy that I've always been a huge fan of his playing, and he's somewhat underrated, but I think a lot of the reasons why he's underrated is his own doing, because he doesn't go out there and work as much as I wish he would.
Eddie, I want to thank you for taking time out to do this interview with me this evening. Like I said, I've been a huge fan of you guys and that metal show for a very long time, and you definitely are an inspiration to me to do what I'm doing right now. So again, thank you for that. And how can people stay in touch with you and see what you got coming up? How can they do that, or buy your merch?
Well, thanks, John. I appreciate it, and best of luck to you with what you're doing, and I appreciate the support. As far as connecting with me, there's a few different ways. My website, which is just my name, eddietrunk.com, and we post music. The site is about me, but it's also about this music in general, so there's music news posted up there. People can email me through the site. They can even see some episodes of that metal show on there, outtakes, photos. My blog, which is Trunk Report, where there's a lot of this KISS stuff. They can leave comments. So the site is pretty much the hub. You can also, there is a merch store on there as well. If you're interested in shirts, hats, and what have you, I do have a line of merch that you can buy on the site. You can also buy my books, both of them, if you're interested in them personalized and signed. You can buy both books directly from me on the site. Or if you're just looking to buy the books in general, you can get them anywhere you buy books, Amazon or Barnes & Noble or what have you. And I'm also active on Twitter, same deal, just my name, @EddieTrunk. And I do post on Facebook. I'm not as interactive on Facebook as most people, but, and again, the Facebook is just, my name, Eddie Trunk, as well. So those are all the different ways to kind of keep up with my world and what's going on. And I also been going out and doing a lot of appearances, hosting shows, doing my own solo shows, doing shows in clubs with Don and Jim that are basically kind of stand-up shows. So we're doing a lot of different stuff, and my schedule's filling up for the summer. And if people go to the homepage of my site, right up there on the homepage, it lists all the cities and things I'm doing and where I'm headed. So hopefully get to meet some people out there on the road.
Before I let you go, will you care to do a promo for the show?
Sure. You got it. Hey, this is Eddie Trunk, and you're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Awesome. Thanks again, Eddie, for everything, and have a good evening, my friend.
All right, man. You got it. Best of luck to you, and I'm glad we could finally connect.
All right. Thank you, dude.